Kalen stared at Marcus for a long moment before responding. Human bioengineering? The technology exists, yes? We studied your species when you first left your homeworld. Your adaptive capabilities are remarkable, far beyond what most organic beings can achieve. But what you are suggesting would be unprecedented. Marcus began pacing around the hangar, his engineering mind working through possibilities. Think about it. Humans have been adapting to hostile environments for millions of years. We survived ice ages, plagues, predators that were bigger and stronger than us. We did it by being clever, by working together, and by never giving up even when the odds were impossible. Lumina made a questioning sound, and Kalen translated her musical tones. She wants to know what you have in mind. The Crimson Talons are used to fighting other dragons, creatures like themselves with predictable abilities and tactics. But humans fight differently. We use tools, we plan, we coordinate. We turn our weaknesses into advantages. Marcus stopped pacing and looked directly at Lumina. What if you had a wing of human pilots, enhanced with your technology, flying ships that could match dragon speed and firepower? What if you had allies who could think like humans but fight like dragons? Kellen's silver-blue features showed deep concern. The process would be irreversible. Any human who underwent such enhancement would be forever changed. They could never return to normal human society. But they would choose it, Marcus said firmly. That's what humans do. We volunteer for dangerous missions. We sacrifice ourselves for causes we believe in. If you gave us the chance to help stop a galactic threat, there would be more volunteers than you could handle. 3 weeks later, a message transmitted on all human frequencies brought volunteers from across human space. Marcus had worked with Kalen to create a simple but compelling recruitment video. Footage of Crimson Talon, attacks on innocent colonies, Lumina's solitary fight against impossible odds, and a chance for humanity to make a difference in something bigger than their own small corner of the galaxy. The response was overwhelming. Former military pilots, civilian volunteers, engineers, medics, and scientists, all willing to undergo experimental bioenhancement to join humanity's first Dragon Alliance. Marcus had expected maybe a few dozen volunteers. Instead, over 3,000 humans arrived at the hidden asteroid base within 2 months. The enhancement process was unlike anything in human medical science. Kellen's technology didn't just modify human biology, it integrated dragon traits at the genetic level while preserving human consciousness and creativity. The volunteers emerged from the biochambers changed but still recognizably human, with enhanced reflexes, improved spatial awareness, and the ability to interface directly with Dragon Tech ships. But the most remarkable change was unexpected. The enhanced humans developed a form of limited telepathic communication, allowing them to coordinate their actions with the precision of a dragon's mind. While maintaining human unpredictability and innovation, they became something entirely new, not human, not dragon, but a synthesis of both species' greatest strengths. Commander Sarah Reeves, formerly of the Human Colonial Defense Force, had been the first to volunteer and the first to complete the enhancement. She stood with Marcus on the observation deck, watching her fellow volunteers practice formation flying in their new biomechanical ships. "I can feel them," she said with wonder in her voice. "All of them. It's like being part of a vast organism, but I'm still myself. I can still think my own thoughts, make my own decisions." She turned to Marcus with eyes that now held flecks of gold similar to Lumina's. "How did you know this would work?" Marcus smiled, watching as Lumina flew alongside the human squadron, her massive form dwarfed by the smaller but incredibly agile bioships. "Because I know humans. We're social creatures. We work best when we're part of something larger than ourselves. The dragon enhancement didn't diminish your humanity, it amplified it." The first test of their new alliance came sooner than anyone expected. Long-range sensors detected a Crimson Talon assault force approaching the Deneb system, where a peaceful Vorthok agricultural colony had refused to evacuate despite repeated dragon attacks. 27 Crimson Talons against 1 first-generation dragon and 300 enhanced humans. By traditional military thinking, it was suicide. Remember, Marcus said over the communication link as the combined fleet approached the battlefield. They expect dragon tactics? Give them something they've never seen before. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. The Crimson Talons arrived expecting to face Lumina alone as they had so many times before. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by a swarm of smaller opponents who moved with dragon speed but fought with human cunning, the enhanced humans used. Tactics no dragon would ever consider: feinting. Retreats to draw enemies into carefully prepared ambushes. Coordinated missile strikes that exploited the Crimson Talons' arrogance, and most devastatingly, psychological warfare that turned the enemy dragons' own aggression against them. Commander Reeves led a squadron that appeared to flee in panic, drawing 5 Crimson Talons into pursuit. When the enemy dragons followed, they found themselves flying into a carefully constructed trap, a narrow asteroid field, where their size became a liability while the smaller human ships could maneuver freely. The enhanced humans swarmed the trapped dragons like angry wasps, their coordinated attacks overwhelming the larger creatures' defenses. Meanwhile, Lumina had engaged the Crimson Talon leader in single combat. For the first time in centuries, she was not fighting alone. Every time an enemy dragon tried to interfere, human pilots would intercept them, giving Lumina the one-on-one battle she needed to use her superior experience and skill. But the most remarkable moment came when one of the Crimson Talons managed to severely wound a human pilot. Marcus watched in amazement as Lumina immediately broke off from her own fight to protect the injured human, using her body as a shield while other pilots evacuated their wounded comrade. The sight of a dragon, a creature of ultimate power, risking herself to save a single enhanced human sent a clear message to the Crimson Talons. This was no longer the isolated resistance they were used to crushing. The battle ended with the Crimson Talon force in full retreat, leaving behind 3 dead and the rest badly wounded. The Human-Dragon Alliance had not lost a single pilot, though several had been injured. More importantly, they had proved that the Crimson Talons could be beaten, but what Marcus had never expected came after the victory celebration. As the fleet regrouped near the Vorthok colony they had saved, Lumina approached the command ship where Marcus was analyzing battle data. Her massive head appeared at the main viewport, and her voice came through the ship's communication system, not translated by Kalen, but speaking directly in perfect English. "Marcus Chun of Earth," she said, her musical tones somehow perfectly articulated in human language. "I have been alone for 3 centuries. I had forgotten what it meant to fight alongside others who chose to stand against darkness. Your species has given me something I thought was lost forever." Marcus stared at her in amazement. "You learned English? When?" "I have been learning since the first moment we met," Lumina replied with what sounded like gentle amusement. "Your species fascinated me from the beginning. But more than that, you showed me that courage is not about being fearless. It is about choosing to act despite fear." She paused, her pale blue eyes focusing intently on Marcus. "I have a proposal for you. The Crimson Talons will not give up after one defeat. They will return with larger forces, new tactics. The galaxy needs guardians, not just dragons, but beings who understand that true strength comes from protecting others rather than dominating them. What are you suggesting?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. "I want to teach. I want to share everything the architects learned about courage, about nobility, about using power wisely. Not just with the enhanced humans, but with anyone who will listen. I want to create a new generation of guardians from all species, united not by biological similarity, but by shared values." Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes as he understood the magnitude of what Lumina was offering. The last of the first-generation dragons was choosing to abandon her solitary war and instead become a teacher, a mentor to beings across the galaxy who shared her commitment to protecting others. "The Dragon Academy," Marcus said softly. "A training ground for guardians from every species." "Yes," Lumina replied, her voice filled with hope for the first time in centuries. "And I want you to be its first director. You have the vision to see how different species can work together." You understand that true courage comes not from power, but from the choice to use whatever abilities you have in service of others. 6 months later, the Dragon Academy accepted its first class of students from 47 different species. Humans, Vorthak, Kalari traders, even a few reformed Crimson Talons, who had abandoned their violent ways after witnessing the power of cooperation over domination. Marcus stood in the Academy's main hall, watching Lumina demonstrate advanced combat techniques to a mixed group of students. Commander Reeves worked with a team of Vorthak engineers to design new bioships that could accommodate non-human physiologies. Kalen shared his people's wisdom. Marcus awakened to the gentle sensation of floating. His atmospheric suit had automatically sealed when it detected vacuum, and emergency oxygen was flowing steadily into his helmet. But instead of the cold emptiness of space, he found himself surrounded by a shimmering energy field that pulsed with soft, pearlescent light. The albino dragon was conscious and flying, its massive wings beating in slow, powerful strokes despite the injury to its left wing. The energy field surrounding them both was emanating from the dragon's scales, creating a protective bubble that somehow maintained pressure and warmth in the vacuum of space. Marcus had never heard of any creature capable of such a feat. Impossible, he breathed, watching stars wheel slowly past as the dragon navigated away from the station's debris field. Behind them, the Kepler 442b mining station was nothing but expanding wreckage and energy signatures. While the Crimson Talon swarm circled in obvious confusion, their sensors blinded by the electromagnetic pulse Marcus had created, the dragon's head turned slightly, one pale blue eye focusing on the small figure clinging to its back. There was unmistakable intelligence in that gaze and what Marcus could only interpret as amusement. The creature was actually pleased with their escape. For 6 hours, they flew through space at speeds that should have been impossible for any biological creature. The dragon seemed to know exactly where it was going, navigating by stellar positions with the precision of an advanced computer. Marcus used the time to tend to his patient's wounds, applying emergency medical patches to the worst of the wing damage. To his amazement, the dragon's natural healing was already beginning to close the smaller cuts, and the bones seemed to be mending themselves faster than any medical technology he knew of. "You're not just intelligent," Marcus realized aloud. "You're engineered. Someone designed you." Their destination turned out to be a hidden asteroid base tucked into a crater on the dark side of a rogue planet. As they approached, Marcus could see that the facility was ancient but well-maintained, with technology that seemed to blend organic curves with mechanical precision. The dragon landed gently in what was clearly a hangar designed specifically for creatures of its size. The moment they touched down, atmosphere flooded the chamber, and Marcus could hear the hiss of pressurization through his suit. Emergency lights activated automatically, revealing a space that was part hangar, part medical bay, and part something else entirely, something that made Marcus's engineering background tingle with excitement. "Welcome, Marcus Chen of Earth," a voice said in perfect English. "I have been waiting a very long time to meet you." Marcus spun around to see a figure emerging from the shadows. It was humanoid but clearly alien, with silver-blue skin and elongated features that suggested great age and wisdom. What was most startling was the figure's clothing, a flowing robe that seemed to be made of the same pearlescent material as the dragon's scales. "You know who I am?" Marcus asked, not bothering to hide his surprise. "I know all the children of Earth who venture into our galaxy," the figure replied with what might have been a smile. "I am Kalen, last of the architects. And you have just saved my finest creation from destruction." Marcus looked between the alien and the dragon, pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to fall into place. "The dragons aren't a natural species. You made them." Kalen nodded, moving to examine the dragon's injured wing with practiced hands. "Long ago, my people sought to create the perfect guardian intelligent enough to make independent decisions, powerful enough to protect entire worlds, and noble enough to use that power wisely. We succeeded beyond our wildest dreams, and then we made the mistake of creating too many." The dragon lowered its massive head and nuzzled against Kellen's outstretched hand with surprising gentleness. Up close, Marcus could see that what he had initially perceived as hideous scarring was actually intricate patterns, etched into the creature's scales, not wounds, but decorations or perhaps functional markings of some kind. The Crimson Talons were our second generation, Kalen continued, beginning to treat the dragon's injuries with tools that seemed to be grown rather than manufactured. We tried to make them more aggressive, more territorial. We thought it would make them better protectors. Instead, we created monsters. They turned on us, destroyed our homeworld, and began hunting down everything we had ever created, especially the first-generation dragons like Lumina here. Lumina? Marcus asked, looking at the dragon with new eyes. That's her name? She chose it herself when she gained full sentience, Kalen said with obvious pride. In the old language, it means light in the darkness. She has been fighting the Crimson Talons for 3 centuries, protecting innocent worlds while they try to claim the galaxy as their hunting ground. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the asteroid base's temperature. 3 centuries? How long do dragons live? The first generation? They do not age as other creatures do. Lumina could theoretically live forever, assuming she survives the war against her corrupted siblings. Kellen's expression darkened, which becomes less likely with each passing year. The Crimson Talons grow bolder and more numerous while she grows more isolated. Lumina made a sound deep in her throat, not quite a roar, but something like a complex musical note. Kalen listened intently, as if understanding every nuance. She says you showed unusual courage for one so small, Kalen translated with amusement. She also says your repair work was competent, though she questions your understanding of dragon anatomy. Marcus laughed, despite everything. Tell her I'm a fast learner. What followed was the most extraordinary education of Marcus's life. Kalen showed him through the asteroid base, revealing technology that made human engineering look like children's toys. The architects had been master bioengineers, creating living machines that could adapt, evolve, and repair themselves. The dragons were their masterpiece, but they had also created entire ecosystems of beneficial organisms, designed to terraform hostile worlds and protect developing civilizations. We thought ourselves wise. Kalen said as they walked through a laboratory where dormant dragon eggs floated in crystalline chambers. We believed that intelligence could be programmed, that nobility was simply a matter of proper conditioning. We learned too late that consciousness cannot be controlled. It can only be nurtured and hoped for. Marcus studied the eggs with fascination. Each one was unique, containing a developing dragon with its own potential personality and abilities. How many are left? 47 eggs remain viable, Kalen said sadly. But I cannot risk hatching them while the Crimson Talons dominate the galaxy. They would hunt down and corrupt or kill each new dragon before it reached maturity. What about Lumina? Could she protect them? Kellen's expression grew troubled. Lumina has been fighting alone for so long that she has begun to lose hope. Each battle costs her more than the last, not just in physical injury, but in spirit. She has seen too many worlds burn, saved too few lives. The weight of being the last of her kind is crushing her. They returned to the hangar to find Lumina testing her repaired wing, extending it carefully to check the range of motion. The emergency patches Marcus had applied were already dissolving, absorbed into her natural healing process. But when she saw them approaching, she settled back down and watched Marcus with obvious curiosity. She wants to know about your species, Kalen said after another exchange of musical tones. Humans are new to this galaxy, but your reputation for impossible bravery has spread remarkably quickly. She has heard stories but never met one of you before. Marcus thought about how to explain humanity to an immortal dragon. We're not the strongest or the smartest species out there, but we're stubborn. When we see something broken, we want to fix it. When we see someone who needs help, we help them. Even when it's dangerous. Especially when it's dangerous. Kalen translated. And Lumina's response was a series of complex harmonics that almost sounded like laughter. She says that explains why you risked your life for a stranger, Kalen said with a smile. She also says it makes humans either the bravest species in the galaxy or the most foolish. Probably both, Marcus admitted. What happened next surprised everyone. Lumina extended one massive claw very carefully, allowing Marcus to clasp it like a handshake. The moment their skin made contact, Marcus felt a rush of images and emotions that nearly overwhelmed him. He saw the galaxy as Lumina had seen it, countless worlds and civilizations, beauty beyond imagination and horrors that defied description. He felt her loneliness, her determination, and her growing despair at the endless cycle of violence, but he also felt something else, a spark of hope that had been rekindled by his simple act of kindness. For the first time in centuries, Lumina was not alone. When the connection faded, Marcus found himself sitting on the hangar floor with tears streaming down his face. Kalen knelt beside him, his ancient features filled with concern. "Are you injured?" The psychic link can be overwhelming for species not prepared for it. "No," Marcus said, wiping his eyes and standing up slowly. "I'm fine. But I understand now. She's not just fighting the Crimson Talons. She's fighting for the memory of everything good your people tried to create." Kalen nodded gravely. "And losing, despite all her courage and power, the Crimson Talons have learned to." Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands with a dirty rag as another explosion echoed through the mining station. The Kepler 442b outpost shook violently, sending tools clattering across his workshop floor. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the evacuation ships launching one by one, carrying the last of the alien colonists to safety. "Another attack," muttered Zix, his Vorthek assistant, whose blue-scaled hands trembled as she organized spare parts into emergency containers. "The Crimson Talon dragons have destroyed 3 more settlements this week. We should have left yesterday with the others." Marcus continued working on the massive atmospheric processor that kept the station's air breathable. His weathered face showed no fear, only the focused concentration of someone who had spent 20 years fixing things that others had given up on. Someone has to keep the life support running until the last transport arrives. Besides, dragons or no dragons, this old girl still has fight left in her. The Vorthik species had colonized this system 50 years ago, but they were a peaceful race of traders and farmers. When the Crimson Talon dragons began their territorial expansion, attacking anything that moved in their claimed space, the Vorthak had no choice but to flee. The dragons were legendary across the galaxy, massive, intelligent, and absolutely ruthless in defending what they considered theirs. "But Marcus, you do not understand." Zix's voice carried the harmonic undertones that indicated extreme distress in her species. "These are not ordinary predators. Dragonfire burns at temperatures that melt starship hulls. Their claws can tear through reinforced titanium like paper. And their intelligence makes them more dangerous than any weapon we have ever faced." Marcus smiled grimly as he tightened another bolt. "Zix, I've been fixing broken things my whole life. Broken ships, broken stations, broken dreams. Sometimes the most dangerous things are just misunderstood." He paused his work and looked at his assistant with gentle eyes. "Trust me on this one." The station's communication system crackled to life. "All remaining personnel, this is Captain Thorne of the evacuation fleet. We have 3 minutes before the Dragon Swarm reaches your position. Emergency Transport Alpha 7 is holding position, but we cannot wait any longer." Zix gathered her belongings frantically. "Marcus, please, we must go now." But Marcus had stopped working entirely. Through the workshop's main window, he could see something that made his breath catch. A dragon was falling from the sky, trailing smoke and fire. But this was not like the others he had seen in the security footage. Where the Crimson Talons were deep red and gold, this creature was pure white, its scales gleaming like polished bone in the station's artificial lights. "My God," Marcus whispered, "look at that." The white dragon crashed into the station's lower mining platform with tremendous force, sending debris flying in all directions. Emergency alarms blared as secondary explosions erupted around the impact site. Through his enhanced binoculars, Marcus could see the creature's condition. One wing was badly torn, hanging at an unnatural angle. Dark fluid that must have been blood pooled beneath its massive form. But what struck Marcus most was how different this dragon looked from the others. "It is albino," Zix breathed, her translator struggling with the awe in her voice. "I have never seen such a thing." And the scarring on its hide? Marcus, this creature has been fighting its own kind. The dragon's head lifted slowly, and even from a distance, Marcus could see the intelligence in its pale blue eyes. But there was something else there, pain, exhaustion, and what looked almost like desperation. The creature's gaze swept across the station until it locked directly onto the workshop window where Marcus stood. "Last call for evacuation." Captain Thorne's voice echoed through the corridors. "Transport Alpha 7 is departing in 60 seconds. Zix tugged at Marcus's sleeve. "We must go. Even if this dragon is injured, it is still incredibly dangerous. When it recovers, it will kill everything in sight." But Marcus was already moving. Not toward the evacuation corridor, but toward his equipment locker. He pulled out his portable fusion cutter, medical kit, and emergency repair tools. "Zix, get to the transport. Tell them I'll catch the next one. There will be no next one." Zix's harmonic distress reached a pitch that made the workshop windows vibrate. "The Crimson Talon swarm will be here in minutes." Marcus sealed his atmospheric suit and checked his oxygen levels. "Then I better work fast." He met his assistant's terrified gaze through his helmet visor. "Zix, in all the years we've worked together, have I ever made a decision that got us killed?" "There is always a first time," she replied, but her voice had softened. "What are you planning to do?" "What I always do," Marcus said, heading toward the emergency access tunnel that led to the mining platform. "Fix something that's broken." As he made his way through the station's maintenance corridors, Marcus could hear the rumble of Transport Alpha 7's engines fading into the distance. He was alone now with an injured dragon that could incinerate him without effort, while a swarm of its enemies approached from orbit. Any rational person would call this suicide, but Marcus had learned long ago that the most impossible situations often had the simplest solutions. The dragon was clearly fleeing from something, probably the other dragons. Its injuries suggested it had been in a fight and lost. And most importantly, it had looked at him with what seemed like recognition, as if it understood that the small figure in the window might be the only thing standing between it and death. The mining platform's atmosphere was barely breathable, filled with smoke and toxic fumes from the crash. Marcus activated his suit's external lights and approached the massive creature carefully. Up close, the dragon was even more impressive. At least 40 meters from nose to tail, with muscles that could crush vehicles and teeth the size of industrial tools. But Marcus had spent his life around dangerous machinery, and he recognized the signs of critical system failure. The dragon's breathing was labored and irregular. Its injured wing was bleeding heavily, and he could see exposed bone where scales had been torn away. Most telling of all, the creature was trying to move but could only manage to drag itself a few meters at a time. "Easy there," Marcus said softly, knowing the dragon probably could not understand English but hoping his tone would convey peaceful intentions. "Let me take a look at that wing." The dragon's massive head turned toward him, pale blue eyes focusing with obvious effort. For a moment, Marcus thought he was about to become a very small pile of ash. Instead, the dragon lowered its head to the platform and watched him with what could only be described as curiosity. Marcus had treated injured animals before Earth animals anyway. The principle was the same: move slowly, speak softly, and never make sudden movements. He activated his medical scanner and swept it over the dragon's injured wing. The readings made him wince. 3 major bone fractures, severe muscle damage, and massive blood loss. "You're in pretty bad shape," he murmured, pulling medical supplies from his kit. "But I've seen worse." He paused, remembering the massive cargo hauler he had once repaired after a meteor strike. "Actually, no, I haven't seen worse. But we're going to figure this out together." The dragon's eyes tracked his every movement as Marcus began cleaning the worst of the wing wounds. To his amazement, the creature held perfectly still, as if it understood that he was trying to help. The pale scales were unlike anything in his experience, harder than steel, but somehow organic, with a pearlescent quality that made them seem to glow from within. "You know," Marcus said as he worked, "the Vorthics say your people are just mindless killers. But you're not, are you? You're running from something. Or someone?" As if in response to his words, the station's long-range sensors began screaming warnings. Marcus's suit display showed dozens of heat signatures approaching from orbit. The Crimson Talon swarm was only minutes away. He looked up at the dragon, whose eyes had gone wide with what was unmistakably fear. "They're after you specifically, aren't they?" Marcus realized. "You're not one of them." The dragon's response was to struggle to its feet, favoring the injured wing but clearly preparing to fight or flee. But in its weakened condition, it would never survive another encounter with its pursuers. Marcus made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone watching. "Trust me," he said, placing one gloved hand on the dragon's massive shoulder. "I have an idea." Marcus ran back toward the station's main reactor core, his mind racing through possibilities. The dragons were tracking their target somehow, probably by heat signature or bioelectric field. But the station's reactor produced enormous electromagnetic interference, especially when overloaded. If he could create enough interference while the dragons were in range, it might mask the albino dragon's signature long enough for it to escape. The only problem was that overloading a fusion reactor while standing next to it was typically fatal for everything within a 10-kilometer radius. But Marcus had spent years studying the reactor safety systems, and he knew there was a narrow window, about 30 seconds, between overload initiation and catastrophic failure. 30 seconds to create an electromagnetic pulse that would blind every sensor in the system, while giving them both just enough time to reach the emergency escape pods. "This is either the smartest thing I have ever done," he muttered to Hai,